Hey, Tatooine Sons family, this is David. Today's episode is a reactions and reviews episode. We're sharing our thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, discussing why The Last of Us works as a live-action adaptation of a video game when so many others, they just don't. And then we can't skip over the recent announcement that Warner Brothers is making plans for more Lord of the Rings films. Thank you for listening. This is Tatooine Sons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the Porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that Porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody listen to this.
Yeah, so when everyone listens to this, we will be in the process of checking out Universal Studios in Orlando. Fun. Nathan, you've been to that park a few times now. Mm-hmm. What's the best ride there and why?
We're talking about Universal Studios Orlando.
Universal Studios
and
Orlando.
Avenger.
Oh, you can combine them both.
It's kind of like saying Disney World. All of it's included.
Okay, so all of it. Yeah, it's, I mean, Velocicoaster all the way.
Velocicoaster?
I love Jurassic Park. I love those movies. John Williams, Michael Giacchino. The entire park is great because they play that music everywhere, and so it's very relaxing. But also the ride itself is just fantastic. It's worth any wait time you give it, really. Because I waited last time I did it, which was a couple.
It was last week.
Yeah,
it was a week ago today.
We waited for like 2 hours and 10 minutes for it because it got
worth
delayed,
every second,
and it was still worth it. And so it's a great ride.
So I have no idea what's at Universal Studios right now. It's been 25 years since I've been there. I know we have Velocicoaster, the Mummy ride, because we talked about that one, and then the Harry Potter stuff.
Yeah,
we aren't Harry Potter.
No,
not really.
Fans. We never got into Harry Potter.
No.
So Sam, what are you most looking forward to if you can't say Velocicoaster?
Oh man, yeah, because Nathan's hyped that up so much.
It's so good.
I know that there's just a lot of great thrill rides, and I'm a huge thrill ride guy, so I'm excited for that. But the whole Transformers thing is cool.
Is there a Transformer ride?
There is. I think it's more like one of those.
I haven't been able to do it yet, but
those like 4D, 3D ride things.
Oh, okay, those are fun.
It's like a simulator ride. Think of it as a little bit like Soarin', but you're not like suspended over anything. It's kind of just like that, a giant screen, you move and all this stuff.
I mean, I just love Transformers, so that'll be cool to see.
All right, so topic one, we're going to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. On that, we saw that a couple weeks ago. Saw an IMAX 3D.
That was cool.
Let's talk first about that experience, just seeing an IMAX 3D. Maybe Nate, what did you think about that?
It's rare that we get an IMAX 3D experience. Last one we did was Avatar 2.
Because they made us.
It's basically is what it is. Yeah, that was the only one that they had available. But I'm glad we did go see this in IMAX 3D because this movie really shined with that format. It's a lot of people said the CGI was lacking. I don't get that. I thought it was one of the most interesting and well put together films we've seen from the MCU recently. There have been a few misses when it comes to the CGI because of overwork in that area, but this one was genuinely really good. I did enjoy the IMAX 3D experience. But
what about you, Sam? What did you think about that experience?
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I was worried going into it that it was going to be a little much. It was going to give me a headache because, for one thing, 3D is a lot in and of itself. Then you have just a bunch of CGI 3D,
right?
And that can be a lot. But it didn't hurt. Like, it wasn't overwhelming at any point. It was all well done enough to where it wasn't like kind of, I don't know, pouring like syrup over your eyes, just like it's too much like sweetness or something, for lack of a better term. So it was all tasteful and done well, and I really glad we saw it in that format.
I walked out of Avatar: The Way of Water with my eyes hurting.
Yes,
And it was a good experience watching the movie, but when I took the glasses off and get out of there, my eyes were hurting.
I mean, that's a 3 hour, 15-minute movie in 3D. That's
didn't have that experience with Quantumania.
That was an hour less, though.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so let's just got kind of one word review of Quantumania. I'll start with you, BB Nate.
Wacky.
Wacky.
in a good way.
Yes, but that's kind of what you're
Okay, expand on that just a little
because the entire movie just had a lot of really strange moments in it. The quantum realm, the people, you had
MODOK's
MODOK. The dude talking about holes. I mean,
I love that guy.
And even the track that was on the soundtrack about that guy talking about his holes that wasn't even in the movie at all.
If you haven't seen this movie, this is a weird conversation we're having right now.
Great.
There was a lot of strange moments in it, and
I thought the best part though was when he was telling Scott, or the guy that was reading
his mind.
His mind was like, "You have 7 holes," and Scott's
just like
thinking about it.
Yeah,
that's right. Because everybody in the theater was doing that. We were all counting our holes.
So no, it was a very wacky movie, fun, wacky.
Okay, what about you, Samuel the Hutt?
I'd say satisfactory.
Okay,
Yeah, that was exactly what I wanted.
all right. So explain more what you mean. What did you
mean,
want to come from it, and how did it meet your expectations?
Well, I mean, it exceeded them in some ways, but in this example, it was fun. It was good CGI. It was and a compelling enough story. It had the Ant-Man humor that you're used to, like the holes guy and the other stuff. The villain, Kang, we can't talk about. I know we're going to talk about that. He was great, but there was also some stuff at the end that like end credit scenes that was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. It was exactly what I wanted from an Ant-Man movie.
I'm trying to remember. I only remember. Oh no, I remember both.
You remember both
the end credit scenes.
Yes, you do.
That's right. I would say if I were to give it one word, I would say surprising. The critical response has been wacky on this,
but not good.
Bad wacky. Not they were not satisfied with this, and I went into it concerned that it was going to be pretty bad and walked out. I remember leaning forward when the credits rolled and looked at you guys and was like, that was actually really good.
Yeah, we were all like,
it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed every bit of it. It was what you expect from Ant-Man, and it had I had lots of people, in all of my different worlds that I walk in ask me afterwards, have you seen Quantumania and what did you think? Because they hadn't seen it yet.
Right.
And I said, it's what you expect from an Ant-Man movie with all of the stakes of Infinity War Endgame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
It's so difficult to read you during movies, though, Dad.
Really?
Because,
yes.
Because I thought the entire movie, I'm like, he's hating this right now.
Really?
I genuinely did, because I look over at you and you just look so deadpan, just like, just your face has no emotion on it. And then you look over at me at the end, you're like, that was really good. I'm like, all right. I mean, the same thing with Avatar. I thought you were hating it. And then afterwards, you're like, I really enjoyed that. I was like, okay, I can't read you during a movie.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this, because I mentioned it just a second ago, but the critics and the fans have very different opinions of this. You got the critics. This is tied for the lowest rated MCU movie in history with the Eternals movie, which
is bad.
We don't like.
We did not
totally against Eternals. We watched it and have never watched it again, and we never watched it again.
Desire.
It will be too soon to watch that movie again. Really didn't like that, and maybe that was a little harsh, but that's the reality. Which was another reason why I was worried going into this movie.
Yeah, you and me both.
With this. But the fans are rating this, in that, 84-85%, I think,
right now,
somewhere around there.
about where it's at thousands of reviews. So the fans seem to like this, while the critics don't. Obviously, we kind of all side with the fans on this. Why do you think there's this discrepancy between the critics and the fans on this?
I think it's, the burnout. MCU... It had the lead up to Endgame, and then I think the critics are kind of like, they're done with it, while fans, obviously
We're starting to get there.
Yeah.
We're starting.
No, I think this movie was well timed. Now that we've got some stakes in the game for this saga, it's just been kind of spinning. MCU's kind of been spinning its wheels. Now we're getting somewhere. But the critics, it wasn't a critic movie. There wasn't any real emotional storyline. There wasn't anything, revolutionary in it. If this had come out, mid 2010s or early 2010s, this would have probably been up there with all the other movies, just because the MCU was still a novelty in a way.
I think that with critics, burnout is a thing, but I also think that it has been a trend the past few months that Marvel's getting bad. Critics shouldn't be liking it, because a lot of big names in the film industry have started coming out saying that Marvel's bad. It's not real cinema. You shouldn't watch it.
Like Martin Scorsese or whatever.
Which critics
And some others.
love Martin Scorsese. Love those type of directors. Fair enough. They're great. They're fantastic. They're classic directors. So they're starting to listen more to those people than just going to this movie to enjoy it. You're not going to get an emotional backstory and story and plot line that's going to make
From
you
an Ant-Man movie.
move you.
It's Scott Lang we're talking
Emotionally,
about.
you're going to go to the Ant-Man movie to see an Ant-Man movie and Marvel and superheroes, and you don't read a comic book to feel moved. You read a comic book to enjoy yourself.
And when a comic book moves you,
It's a special moment.
It's a special moment. When you have I Love You
3,000
Yeah.
type stuff in Endgame and all of that moves you because it's not what you're there for.
Right.
It's important to keep in mind that what you're getting into when you get into a movie, right? We appreciate all sorts of movies. We love
Absolutely.
the classics. We also love Marvel, right? It's like getting a taco from Taco Bell.
I was going to use this kind of illustration. Go for
and
it.
is very different than getting a taco from like an authentic Mexican restaurant. You're still getting a taco, but if you go to a Taco Bell expecting a authentic Mexican style taco, like restaurant taco,
You'll be disappointed.
you're going to be disappointed. But if you go to Taco Bell expecting a Taco Bell taco, you're going to be satisfied. So go to the MCU expecting an MCU movie and you'll be satisfied.
Now I need a taco. All right.
But is it cheese pizza?
The thing that made this movie special, in my opinion, was Jonathan Majors' portrayal
Yes,
of Kang
sir.
the Conqueror. In this, I'll start with you, Samuel. Why is Kang terrifying?
Well, I mean, he's just effortlessly strong, he and ruthless, right? Like he just destroys timelines just to destroy timeline, like with just a, for lack of a better term, snap of his fingers, right? You see what I did there?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But also a large part of that is the portrayal, because like Jonathan Majors, he's kind of able to portray this gravitas without needing to be like forceful.
Big, deep voice,
No.
bad guy.
It's just there's this little
the
bit
Thanos,
behind,
right?
yeah, there's just this little bit behind his voice that gives you the urgency of what he's saying and why it's so important, right?
But then
and
he played great good guys as well. Devotion, he did an amazing
Right.
job. I'm liking this rise of Jonathan Majors that we've been seeing.
But in this movie, he's able to back up his words with obviously his brains and that birth the technology that he uses, right? So, I think that's part of it, and then a large part of it was well done by goodness, I'm forgetting the Hope's mom's character's name. Janet.
Van Dyne. Janet Van Dyne.
Her like building it up helped, honestly, because
her terror, her
yes, yeah, it made you realize, oh, this guy is someone to deal with,
Yeah.
and then they explain why, and you're like, wow, yeah, that makes sense now.
Can I go now?
Yeah, go.
I feel like a caged tiger. I'm ready.
I know you've been ready. I
so
did this
many
on
conspiracy theories. First of all, he's the antagonist of this movie, but he is not a bad guy. I don't get all the people that are saying he's a bad guy. Watch the movie. Pay attention. He's not.
I'll be honest, I wouldn't have caught this if you didn't point it
There's
out.
so many moments in this movie that you understand his talking, what he's talking about. He's like, I'm trying to save you guys. Everything he's saying, Marvel is playing with us.
So connect this to He Who Remains, because you did this in the way home.
So I gotta explain everything.
Okay, go for it.
My the conspiracy theory like GIF with the.
We got two more topics.
Yeah,
in
right,
this
I get that. I'll try to go fast.
so.
But we see him. Marvel has played with us. We've had 24 movies of the normal bad guys being bad guys, saying that what I'm doing is right when what they're doing actually isn't right. So we watch this and we hear, I'm trying to save you guys. I'm trying to save this planet and save this timeline. And we are all thinking, oh, yeah, right. That's just his misguided notions. But everything he's saying was the actual truth. Now, with He Who Remains and the Council of Kangs, I guess is what you can say.
The Kang Dynasty.
The Kang
he even
Dynasty.
talks about the Kang Dynasty.
They are all wanting to keep the timeline in complete order without letting time do what it needs to do.
Like that.
Time has a function. They're not allowing that to do it whatever it needs to do. And so when He Who Remains was at that part, he was a genuine bad guy. We kind of, when we were watching him, we were like, oh, maybe he's like not actually horrible, and Kang, the one we're seeing in this movie, is the real bad guy. Mm-hmm. But we kind of gathered that no, He Who Remains is the exact opposite. And so Ant-Man totally screwed everything up with this movie. he got rid of the one thing keeping the Kang Dynasty from starting. And so what are we going to do now?
I loved it. I love when Nathan gets like these thoughts because he's right most of the time.
Let me ask some like leading questions to get more info here, right?
So witness objection,
right? So this Kang was trying to stop all the other Kangs.
Yes,
he was banished into the quantum realm because that's outside of space and time,
which I also predicted, by the way.
You did.
I did.
Good job. And he was banished by the Kangs, right? Because they knew that he could stop him. So him trying to get out was trying to save the world, but then Lang thinking that Kang
was bad.
That's confusing.
Everybody thought Kang was
Lang versus Kang
was bad
because Janet
ended up actually screwing everything up because now the other Kangs can. Okay,
all because Janet was looking at that stuff the wrong way and wouldn't listen to what Kang was actually trying to say.
Why haven't the other Kangs striked, whatever, until now?
Because they were genuinely terrified of this Kang. You saw what he did in the quantum realm with just like 20 years. He created an empire in a place he didn't know where he was at. That's an insane amount of power. So he, with all this technology and an absolute passion, nothing to lose except to try to save this timeline, that combination allowed him to just be a force to be reckoned with.
So now that he's dead, they think
so now that he's
forward.
So he can just move. And then we have the second post-credit scene, which I think is just as important as the first one, especially when we're dealing with this Kang. We didn't see Kang die, and you know when it comes to Marvel, if you don't see someone die, they're dead.
They're probably not dead.
They're probably not dead. So we see him sucked up into the battery that is used to time travel. And then in the second Loki, the Loki post-credit scene,
the first
we
one,
see, I keep forgetting his name.
Mobius?
No.
Victor Timely.
Victor Timely. We see him, talking about time machines, and that's Kang. And you see Loki is terrified, as he should be.
And I guess in the comic books, Victor Timely is a character where Kang goes back in time because he's been defeated.
Yes.
And he
like creates a
town and builds to bide his time until he can get back to where he needs to be. So you think that the Kang we see, the Victor Timely version of Kang, is actually Kang the Conqueror from Quantumania?
Yes.
And we're going to see him in Loki.
Yes, I think we see him in Loki, and I do think we see him later on in the MCU, and I would absolutely love if they find a way to let him team up, or at least maybe even be a part of the Avengers at that point
be cool?
Against the Kang Dynasty, because that'd be insane.
That was fun.
I had to get that all out.
You got to come to this show for this kind of conversation. So, all right, topic 2. Let's talk a little bit about The Last of Us. We haven't talked about that much on this show, but it's something that we're watching, and we've got some interesting thoughts on this. I'm curious to. I guess my first question would be, and we don't need to get into like episode by episode breakdown stuff. We're not doing that with this.
No.
This is
that's
just
why we haven't talked about it like that.
An overview of it, but obviously this is an adaptation of a game. I'll start with you, Sam. Do you think that this is the best film or TV adaptation of a game so far?
I mean, it's tough because I haven't played the game. I know, and I'm familiar enough with the game, but it is certainly, from what I've been hearing, talking to Nathan, talking to my friend Tristan, who this is probably his favorite game ever, I think. They're loving it. They think that this is an absolutely phenomenal game, even though it does take some
show.
Even though it does take some liberties, some little things are changed and added here and there. All in all, it's been a very faithful adaptation from what I've heard, and completely satisfying. And I agree. I think it's very good. The last video game adaptation that I can think of watching was the Halo show.
Yeah.
We watched
that was not good.
It was
You
not
watched
good.
part
It
of-
wasn't. And I hadn't even played Halo for that too, but I had talked to friends who had, and everybody was like, it wasn't good. And I could even just told you that without playing the games. But this seems to be doing it very, very well.
All right, so, BB Nate, what do you think? You played more games, probably.
I have played more games, and I played this game after the first episode. Kind of, I think, like, as the show was announced, basically, it was like hyping up and about to the first episode. I'm like, okay, I'll get the game, I'll play it, and I'll see if I enjoy it. And I did. I really did enjoy it, and I thought it was a great game and everything.
Okay.
It was great. So I was excited about this adaptation. And yes, this adaptation has done a very good job of keeping the main points and main story beats and even some of the scenes from the game, putting them into this show, but still taking some different opportunities with it, which was encouraging, because when you do an adaptation, everybody wants it to be like, I want it to be exactly like the game. Well, they don't actually want it to be exactly like the game. They want it to be similar to the game,
want it to
but have
feel
something
like the
different.
game.
And they do that perfectly, because they had the director of the original game on this show writing it. So he obviously really cares for this entire franchise. So yes, I would say, from what I've seen, the best adaptation of a game.
So then I'll go back to you, BB Nate. What are some of the changes that we've seen so far in the series? I guess we're through episode. We didn't watch last night's.
No.
We got to finish recording so we can watch it. Well, yeah, okay. We're like recording this like
Right.
2 weeks before this comes out. But anyway, yeah. So what are some of the changes that you've seen?
From like going back to the last episode, the Tommy and Joel one that we watched,
which was
that
so
town,
good.
that town's very different than what it is in the game. In the game, it kind of feels more just like this, like, survival place, you know, like the bunch of people are held up in this one area. They're just trying to survive. In this place, it looks like they're living, like they're genuinely functioning well.
Yeah,
they have
a good
an amazing
society.
town.
Yeah.
They're functioning, and that was different. And then you know you have some liberties like the episode 3. That entire episode, it wasn't in the game. I mean, nothing. It
was an expansion of a tiny little storyline, and
even then it was different in the game, because in the game Joel and Ellie team up with Bill for like an entire segment of the game, and eventually Bill like finds Frank dead, and reads a letter saying, Frank's like, I hate you, I've hated you for so much. And so like
they changed
that was
it up
insanely
dramatically.
different.
Yeah,
and so watching that episode, I was like, okay, this is way different than what I was expecting from the show, but it worked well enough for what they were trying to go for. So there was a lot of other changes.
Well, and then like Henry and Sam were very different.
Sam being deaf actually wasn't in the game, and that hurt so much more.
Well, so you guys listening to this don't know this about Nate, but you know, Nathan's second language education stuff that he's doing has been sign language, and so you know that you connect with that storyline in a different way.
Right as I heard that, I was like, oh, this is gonna suck, because I knew what was going to happen in the end of it. And, you know, knowing what's going to happen, you think, okay, I can be prepared for this. I can be ready for this. This won't hurt as much as it did in the game.
But they did it differently.
They did it differently then. And it hurt so much more in the game. Right as it happened, right as Henry shot Sam and then took his own life, it cuts to black. Immediately at that point, and then you just switch to them like walking around, Joel and Ellie walking around in the fall. There's no resolution. I paused it. I'm like, okay, give me a second to just process what I just went through. Yeah. But in this one, they took their time to breathe, and it hurt so much more. Ellie never tried to help Sam with his infection. Like, she didn't know about it. She never like cut her hand to rub the blood in, and that hurt. They were just making it so much worse than it was. Yeah.
So I'll go back to you, Sam, with another question. What does this mean for other game adaptations coming forward? Because what are some big ones coming out?
God of War.
Tomb
Raider is coming out too.
What about the Japanese samurai game you guys play?
Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes,
that is getting a movie adaptation.
So, I mean, there's some big ones coming up here. What do you think that the success of Last of Us means for all of those other future games or future shows, adaptations?
I think it means that it can be done. Video game adaptations have been rocky. Some have been good, some have been bad. I know Sonic movies were pretty well received.
I wouldn't even consider those game adaptations, though. They were just like a character from the games.
That's
and just
fair.
Doing what
That's
they
fair.
Want.
So I guess you can hardly really consider the Super Mario game an adaptation.
Not really.
I wouldn't. But like the Mortal Kombat movie.
Okay, yeah.
That one was a bit more of a mixed bag of reviews, but overall it was a pretty faithful adaptation. But again, it didn't adapt any stories, right? I think this shows that if you take what made the game good, right, what the elements of the game that people liked, the aspects of the story, the main plot points that are important, mesh those together while sprinkling in just a little bit of new stuff, you got your recipe. Now, the hard part is striking the balance between just copying a game and too much new stuff. But I think that this did it well, and so it's shown that it can be done.
One last question for you, Nate. Of all the future adaptations coming out, which ones are most exciting to you? Because you love like God of War.
I do, and I love Ghost of Tsushima. So I'd have to say God of War,
really,
because that's going to be a show and not a movie, so I can expect more from it. And I know what the story is going to entail, and I know what Sony PlayStation can do with the TV show adaptation of the game.
Was this a PlayStation exclusive?
Yes, this was. So it just shows that Sony exclusives can do better in every aspect.
I'm excited for Ghost.
All right, here we go, Sam. We'll run through this real quick.
All right, real
there's
fast.
not much to talk about.
No, there
just
isn't.
enough.
It was just
enough.
Okay.
There's a new Lord of the Rings film sequel, prequel, requel. I don't know what it's going to be. So, Sam,
Lord of the Rings movie.
You're our resident Lord of the Rings super nerd.
I am. I actually just finally ordered like a cool Ring of Power.
Did you really? I saw that in our Amazon stuff.
It's like
I'm
a black.
who ordered that?
Because
Anyway,
I always wanted one.
Are you in favor of new Lord of the Rings films from Warner Brothers?
And I haven't allowed myself much time to think about this. In some ways, of course, I'm excited for more Lord of the Rings. In other ways, I'm terrified. Rings of Power, they caught me quick because I knew it was going to be good, and I knew that it was an existing story that they're just adapting, and it's not all that connected to the original trilogy, right? In this, I have no idea what's going on. Like nothing. What do they adapt? We've already hit the Silmarillion, or we're hitting the Silmarillion. We've hit the main 3 books. All that's left from there are some little side stories and side notes from Tolkien, right? Nothing really that was fleshed out. I think there's a couple stories here and there, but nothing like the Silmarillion or the original trilogy or the original 3 books, right? So it's a little scary, but I'm cautiously optimistic would be the best.
What about you, BB Nate? What do you think?
I'm excited to see what they do, because they obviously have some passion behind this. They wanted to do this. It's not just they're trying to do it, so they're wanting to tell more stories. And I know that the Tolkien estate wouldn't allow it if there wasn't some importance behind it that they wanted to tell, because they were, when it came to selling the television rights for Lord of the Rings, they were insanely strict on what they would allow. Because Netflix was like, we're going to do an Aragorn solo series, a Legolas solo series, a Gandalf, and they're like, no, we're not doing that. You're not going to do it. We don't want that to happen. And so Amazon was like, we're going to do a second age story. We're going to make sure that like we adapt it right from the books. It's like, okay, that's fine. They don't want them to touch the first age though. I don't know if that's going to be allowed though in the films.
I doubt it.
But I'm wondering if we get some more stories in between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Maybe even see Samwise's adventure after Lord of the Rings, the story that he can tell from the book that Frodo gave him. Just seeing those kind of things might be more interesting. But I mean, I would also like to see kind of a Gandalf-esque like origin story kind of. But we're already getting
a little bit about that in a minute. Let me ask you guys, do you think they should coordinate these films with the Rings of Power or leave them separate?
Leave them separate at this point. That's 2 different studios. It would be too difficult to try to coordinate.
I agree.
That was a fast answer. Okay, what stories would you want? Now, Peter Jackson is in like conversations to be a part of this.
Really?
With this, he's
after Mortal Engines, he needs work.
He put out an official
Mortal
statement,
Engines.
Oh yeah.
With this, stating that they're in conversations with Warner Brothers and with the Tolkien estate and with everybody about what this looked like, and they're very positive conversations, is what he said. So let's assume that Jackson gets to do this. Okay, what stories do you want him to tell? You know, there's rumors about like Gandalf stories, more of Aragorn, maybe as Strider. With that, or is there something else? I'll start with you, Sam.
See, I don't like the concept of a
like
solo character spin-off movie for this series. That's not a thing in the books, and I don't think it should be a thing in the movies. It never really no book is dedicated to one character. You could kind of argue that The Hobbit is like that, but it's really about the dwarves and that whole.
No, there's definitely a
whole
fellowship
group.
involved in that.
Right.
I mean, that's literally the entire
I
point.
feel like you take Lord of the Rings and you start focusing on a single character, it feels weird. It doesn't feel like Lord of the Rings. Part of Lord of the Rings is this group going on a grand adventure together, right? Even Rings of Power,
to an extent.
they didn't go on a grand adventure, but it's starting, and it wasn't just focusing on one character. It was multiple storylines, running at once. So I'm nervous about that. That's kind of what I mentioned earlier. I don't know what they adapt or what they tell. So I'm going to just keep it open and trust that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't know what they could tell from this point. I don't know what stories they might want to tell. I have faith that they know what they're doing and if they don't, there's always the DC universe to look forward to from Warner Brothers. So
Got to throw in a DC.
I do, of course. But
every once in a while.
and we also have Rings of Power to look forward to.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that Warner Brothers is wanting to steal any power away from Rings of Power. I just think they're seeing this point right now. They're like, okay, Lord of the Rings is getting a lot more popular again at this point due to Rings of Power, due to just kind of the era we are back into. Like the fantasy stuff is starting to come up again.
Yeah.
So let's capitalize on that. Let's make more of these stories and tell more of them. But maybe we'll get a Radagast Brown.
I was going to say, maybe we get you get a storyline, a film around the wizards.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yes, that would be cool. I would like that.
Yeah.
I am your father.
All of the topics that we discussed on this episode have one thing in common. They're subjective. As you can tell, we really enjoyed Quantumania. We like a lot of things about The Last of Us. Well, there's some things about it that we don't like as much. And as huge fans of The Lord of the Rings, we're both excited and cautious about the idea of new movies. But the point is, we can like some things and not like others and do it with grace. It's the old saying, different strokes for different folks. We thank you for liking our show and for being a part of the Tatooine Sons family. If you could give us a rating and review on the podcast app that you're listening to it on, if you can open it up, if it has that platform or that element to it, we would certainly appreciate it. It does so much for helping other people find the show and for helping us to understand what you love about the show and what we can do better. And of course, if you're not following us on that podcast app, please take the second to do that so you don't miss any episodes going forward. You can follow us on all of our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. We'd love for you to interact with us on that. And then please share the show. If you know people out there that love nerdy stuff like this and maybe would even value a dad moment on every episode, we would definitely love for them to be a part of the family as well. So please share the show with them. That's going to do it for this week. I think next week we are talking about Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Can't wait to talk about that. We will be seeing you guys on the socials. And until then,
may the force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.
Yep, yep.